Picture this. You're walking down a busy street, surrounded by people rushing to their next destination. But something feels different about you. You notice the trees swaying in the breeze, hear the birds singing their melodies, and feel a deep sense of peace within. This is what it's like to be spiritually awakened. But did you know that along with this newfound awareness comes a list of things you'll naturally want to give up? Today, we're diving into the 7 things that spiritually awakened people quit doing. And let me tell you, number 5 might just blow your mind. Now, you might be wondering, why should I care about what spiritually awakened people quit doing? Well, here's the thing. Spiritual awakening isn't just about feeling good or having mystical experiences. It's about transforming your entire life from the inside out. When you start to see the world through awakened eyes, you begin to realize that many of the things you once thought were important, well, they just aren't anymore. Quitting these 7 things isn't about depriving yourself or following a set of strict rules. It's about naturally letting go of what no longer serves you. It's like cleaning out your closet. You're making room for new, beautiful experiences that align with who you truly are. And the best part? As you let go of these old habits and ways of thinking, you'll find yourself feeling lighter, happier, and more at peace than ever before. This journey of quitting isn't always easy, but it's incredibly rewarding. Each thing you let go of is like removing a heavy weight from your shoulders. You'll start to move through life with more ease, grace, and joy. And who doesn't want that? So, whether you're just starting your spiritual journey or you've been on the path for years, understanding these 7 things can be a game changer. They'll help you recognize the signs of your own awakening and give you a roadmap for what might come next. Ready to dive in? Let's get started with number 1. Have you ever had one of those days where you get home from work and can barely remember the drive? Or maybe you've eaten an entire meal without tasting a single bite. If so, you're not alone. Many of us spend a lot of our lives on autopilot, going through the motions without really being present. But here's the thing. Spiritually awakened people quit this habit, and for good reason. Living on autopilot is like watching your life go by through a foggy window. You can see the general shapes and movements, but you're missing all the beautiful details. When you're spiritually awakened, it's like someone's cleaned that window, and suddenly you can see everything clearly. The colors are brighter, the sounds are clearer, and every moment feels full of life. So, what does quitting autopilot mode look like in real life? Well, it starts with something as simple as really tasting your morning coffee. Instead of gulping it down while scrolling through your phone, you might take a moment to smell the aroma, feel the warmth of the cup in your hands, and savor each sip. It's about turning ordinary moments into extraordinary experiences. But it doesn't stop there. Quitting autopilot mode extends to your relationships too. Instead of having the same old conversations with your partner or friends, you start to really listen. You notice the subtle changes in their tone of voice, the emotions behind their words. You become fully present in your interactions, and as a result, your relationships deepen and become more meaningful. At work, quitting autopilot can transform your experience. Instead of counting down the hours until you can go home, you start to engage fully with your tasks. You might find new, creative solutions to old problems. You might even discover a sense of purpose in work you once found boring. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds great, but how do I actually do it? Well, the good news is that quitting autopilot doesn't require any special skills or training. It's simply about waking up to the present moment again and again. One simple way to start is by setting reminders throughout your day. You could put sticky notes in places you'll see them, or set alarms on your phone. When you see the note or hear the alarm, take a deep breath and really notice what's happening around you. What can you see? What can you hear? What sensations can you feel in your body? Another powerful technique is to practice mindfulness during routine activities. Let's say you're washing dishes. Instead of letting your mind wander to your to-do list or replaying an argument from earlier in the day, focus on the experience of washing dishes. Feel the warm water on your hands, smell the soap, listen to the sound of the water. This might sound simple, but it can be surprisingly powerful. As you practice quitting autopilot, you might notice some interesting changes. Colors might seem brighter. Food might taste better. You might find yourself feeling more grateful for the little things in life. And here's a secret. The more you practice being present, the easier it becomes. It's like building a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. But here's the really exciting part. As you quit living on autopilot, you open yourself up to moments of profound insight and connection. You might suddenly understand something about yourself that you've been struggling with for years. You might have a moment of deep connection with a stranger on the bus. You might even experience a sense of oneness with the world around you. Remember, quitting autopilot isn't about being perfectly present every moment of every day. That's not realistic, and it's not even necessary. It's about gradually increasing your awareness, one moment at a time. It's about choosing, again and again, to show up for your life. So, the next time you find yourself going through the motions, take a deep breath. Look around you. Really see the world you're in. Because when you quit living on autopilot, you're not just changing a habit. You're waking up to the magic of your own life. Now, let's talk about something we've all done at one time or another: judging others. You know those moments when you see someone wearing an outfit you think is ridiculous, or when you hear about a decision someone made and think, "I would never do that." Well, here's the thing. Spiritually awakened people work on quitting this habit, and the reasons why might surprise you. First, let's be clear. Quitting judgment doesn't mean you stop having opinions or that you approve of everything everyone does. It's not about becoming a doormat or losing your ability to discern. Instead, it's about recognizing that your judgments often say more about you than they do about the person you're judging. When you judge others, it's like you're wearing a pair of glasses that color everything you see. These glasses are shaped by your own experiences, fears, and insecurities. So when you judge someone else, you're not seeing them clearly. You're seeing a reflection of your own inner world. Spiritually awakened people realize that every person is on their own unique journey. They understand that everyone is doing the best they can with the tools and knowledge they have at that moment. This doesn't mean they agree with everyone's choices, but they approach others with compassion and understanding rather than harsh judgment. So, what does quitting judgment look like in everyday life? Well, let's say you're in a meeting at work, and a colleague presents an idea that you think is terrible. Instead of immediately dismissing them or thinking they're incompetent, you might pause and get curious. What led them to this idea? What are they seeing that you might be missing? This approach not only leads to better teamwork, but can also open you up to new perspectives you might not have considered. Or imagine you're scrolling through social media and see a post from someone sharing a belief that's completely opposite to yours. Instead of immediately labeling them as wrong or stupid, you might take a moment to consider what experiences might have led them to that belief. This doesn't mean you have to agree with them, but it allows you to maintain a sense of connection with your fellow humans, even when you disagree. Quitting judgment also applies to how you view yourself. Often, we're our own harshest critics. But as you practice suspending judgment of others, you'll likely find that you become kinder to yourself too. You might start to recognize that your own mistakes and flaws are just part of your unique journey, just like everyone else's. Now, I know what you might be thinking. But isn't judgment sometimes necessary? Don't we need to be able to tell right from wrong? And you're absolutely right. The key is to discern without condemning. You can recognize that a behavior is harmful without attaching that judgment to the person's entire being. It's the difference between thinking that action was unkind and that person is a bad person. So how do you start quitting the habit of judgment? One powerful technique is to practice empathy. When you find yourself judging someone, try to put yourself in their shoes. Imagine what their life might be like, what challenges they might be facing that you can't see. This simple act can often dissolve judgment and replace it with understanding. Another helpful practice is to catch yourself in the act of judging. When you notice a judgmental thought, don't judge yourself for having it. That would be counterproductive. Instead, simply notice it and let it go. You might even thank your mind for trying to protect you, because often, that's what judgment is, a misguided attempt at self-protection, and then choose a different response. As you practice quitting judgment, you might notice some surprising benefits. For one, you'll likely find that your relationships improve. When you approach others with openness and acceptance, they're more likely to open up to you in return. You might find yourself having deeper, more meaningful conversations and forming stronger connections. You might also notice that you feel more peaceful. Judgment often comes with a lot of mental and emotional baggage. When you let it go, it's like putting down a heavy suitcase you didn't even realize you were carrying. You might find yourself feeling lighter, more relaxed, and more at ease in the world. But perhaps the most profound effect of quitting judgment is the way it can open your heart. When you stop seeing the world through the lens of right and wrong, good and bad, you create space for a deeper understanding of the beautiful complexity of human experience. You might find yourself feeling a greater sense of connection not just to other people, but to all of life. Remember, quitting judgment is a journey, not a destination. You're not aiming for perfection, but for progress. Each time you catch a judgmental thought and choose compassion instead, you're rewiring your brain and opening your heart a little bit more. And in doing so, you're not just changing yourself, you're changing the world around you, one interaction at a time. Now, let's talk about something that might seem a bit counterintuitive at first: quitting the chase for happiness. You might be thinking, wait a minute, isn't being happy a good thing? Why would spiritually awakened people quit trying to be happy? Well, stick with me, because this is where things get really interesting. First, let's clarify what we mean by chasing happiness. This isn't about giving up on joy or deciding to be miserable. It's about letting go of the belief that happiness is something you need to pursue, achieve, or earn. It's about quitting the endless cycle of thinking, I'll be happy when I get that promotion, when I find the perfect partner, when I lose those 10 pounds, and so on. Spiritually awakened people understand that true happiness isn't something you chase. It's something you uncover. They realize that joy is your natural state, but it often gets buried under layers of stress, worry, and societal expectations. So instead of chasing after happiness, they focus on removing the obstacles to it. So what does this look like in real life? Well, imagine you're stuck in traffic. The old you might have been frustrated, thinking, I'll be happy when I finally get out of this jam. But when you quit chasing happiness, you might instead use this time to practice presence. You might notice the way the sunlight plays on the cars around you, or use the time to listen to a podcast you enjoy. You're not waiting to be happy later. You're finding moments of joy right where you are. Or let's say you're single and have been feeling like you need to find a partner to be truly happy. Quitting the happiness chase doesn't mean giving up on love. Instead, it means recognizing that your wholeness and joy don't depend on someone else. You might start to appreciate the freedom of your single life, dive into hobbies you love, or deepen your relationships with friends and family. You're not waiting for happiness to arrive with a perfect partner. You're cultivating it in your life right now. One of the most powerful aspects of quitting the happiness chase is that it frees you from the tyranny of what if and if only. How often have you achieved something you thought would make you happy, only to find that the joy was fleeting and you were soon focused on the next goal? This is the hedonic treadmill, the tendency to quickly return to a relatively stable level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. When you quit chasing happiness, you step off this treadmill. Instead of always looking to the future for happiness, spiritually awakened people practice finding joy in the present moment. This doesn't mean they don't have goals or ambitions, but they don't pin their happiness on achieving those goals. They understand that life is a journey, not a destination, and that each moment along the way is precious. Now, you might be wondering, how do I actually do this? How do I quit chasing happiness? Well, one powerful practice is gratitude. Each day, take a few moments to appreciate what you already have. This could be as simple as enjoying a cup of coffee, feeling the sun on your face, or appreciating the people in your life. As you practice gratitude, you'll start to notice more and more things to be grateful for, and this appreciation itself becomes a source of joy. Another key practice is mindfulness. This ties back to quitting autopilot, which we talked about earlier. When you're fully present in the moment, you're more able to experience the joy that's already there. You might notice the beauty of a flower you pass on your way to work, or really savor the taste of your lunch instead of eating mindlessly at your desk. It's also helpful to examine your beliefs about happiness. Often, We have unconscious beliefs that happiness comes from external things, success, relationships, material possessions. While these things can bring pleasure, true, lasting happiness comes from within. Start to notice when you're telling yourself, "I'll be happy when," and gently challenge that thought. Ask yourself, "Can I find a way to be content right now, just as things are?" As you practice quitting the happiness chase, you might notice some interesting changes. For one, you might find that you actually feel happier more often. This might seem paradoxical, but it makes sense when you think about it. When you're not constantly striving for some future state of happiness, you're more able to appreciate the joy that's already present in your life. You might also notice that you feel more peaceful and less anxious. A lot of our stress comes from the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. When you quit chasing happiness, you close that gap. You're no longer constantly measuring your life against some imagined ideal future. Another beautiful effect of quitting the happiness chase is that it can deepen your relationships. When you're not looking to others to make you happy, you're able to love more freely and authentically. You're not burdening your relationships with the impossible task of making you happy. Instead, you're showing up as a whole, content person, ready to share joy rather than seek it. But perhaps the most profound effect of quitting the happiness chase is the sense of freedom it brings. When your well-being isn't dependent on external circumstances, you become more resilient. Life's ups and downs don't throw you off balance as much. You're able to face challenges with more grace and equanimity, knowing that your inner peace doesn't depend on everything going your way. Remember, quitting the chase for happiness doesn't mean you'll never feel sad, angry, or frustrated. These emotions are part of the rich tapestry of human experience, and spiritually awakened people don't try to avoid them. Instead, they learn to be with all their emotions without being controlled by them. They understand that true joy comes not from avoiding difficult feelings, but from embracing the fullness of life, with all its light and shadow. So, the next time you find yourself thinking, "I'll be happy when," take a deep breath. Look around you. Can you find something to appreciate right now, in this moment? Can you open yourself to the joy that's already here, waiting to be noticed? Because when you quit chasing happiness, you give yourself the chance to discover that what you've been looking for has been with you all along. Let's dive into something that many of us struggle with: people pleasing. You know that feeling when you say yes to something you really want to say no to? Or when you change your opinion just to fit in with a group? That's people pleasing in action. But here's the thing. Spiritually awakened people work on quitting this habit, and for good reason. Now, don't get me wrong. Being kind and considerate to others is a beautiful thing. But people-pleasing goes beyond that. It's about constantly putting others' needs and wants before your own, often at the expense of your own well-being and authenticity. It's like wearing a mask all the time, always trying to be who you think others want you to be. Spiritually awakened people understand that true connection and meaningful relationships come from being authentic, not from trying to please everyone all the time. They realize that by always saying yes and never expressing their true feelings, they're not actually doing anyone any favors, not themselves and not the people around them. So what does quitting people-pleasing look like in real life? Well, imagine you're invited to a party, but you're feeling exhausted and really need some alone time. Instead of forcing yourself to go because you don't want to disappoint the host, you might politely decline and suggest meeting up another time when you're feeling more energized. This isn't about being selfish. It's about honoring your own needs and showing up as your best self when you do spend time with others. Or let's say you're in a meeting at work and someone suggests an idea that you think won't work. Instead of nodding along to avoid conflict, you might respectfully share your concerns. This doesn't mean being confrontational or unkind. It's about expressing your authentic thoughts in a way that adds value to the conversation. One of the most powerful aspects of quitting people-pleasing is that it allows you to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls that keep people out. They're guidelines that show others how to treat you. When you quit people-pleasing, you're essentially saying, "This is who I am, this is what I need, and this is how I want to be treated." It's a profound act of self-respect and self-care. Now, you might be thinking, but won't people dislike me if I stop people-pleasing? Here's the surprising truth. Most people respect authenticity. When you're genuine, even if others don't always agree with you, they know where you stand. This clarity can actually lead to deeper, more meaningful relationships. So how do you start quitting the habit of people-pleasing? One powerful technique is to practice pausing before you respond to requests. Instead of automatically saying yes, take a moment to check in with yourself. How do you really feel about this request? Does it align with your values and priorities? If you need time to think about it, it's okay to say, "Let me get back to you on that." Another helpful practice is to start small. You don't have to make huge changes overnight. Maybe you start by expressing a preference about where to eat lunch with friends, or by sharing an honest opinion about a movie you watched. As you practice being more authentic in low-stakes situations, you'll build the confidence to do so in more significant areas of your life. As you work on quitting people-pleasing, you might notice some surprising benefits. For one, you'll likely find that you have more energy. When you're not constantly trying to be who you think others want you to be, you free up a lot of mental and emotional energy. You might find yourself feeling more creative, more inspired, and more alive. You might also notice that your relationships become more genuine. When you show up as your authentic self, you give others permission to do the same. This can lead to deeper connections and more meaningful conversations. You might find that some relationships fall away, and that's okay. The ones that remain and the new ones you form will be based on who you truly are, not on a persona you've created to please others. But perhaps the most profound effect of quitting people-pleasing is the sense of freedom it brings. When you're not constantly worried about what others think of you, you're free to explore who you really are and what you really want. You're free to follow your own path, to make choices that align with your values and dreams. And in doing so, you open yourself up to a more authentic, fulfilling life. Remember, quitting people-pleasing is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you slip back into old habits, and that's okay. The key is to be gentle with yourself and keep practicing. Each time you choose authenticity over people-pleasing, you're building a stronger, truer version of yourself. And that's something truly worth celebrating. Now, we're going to talk about something that might surprise you. It's the fifth thing that spiritually awakened people quit, and it's a big one. Resisting change. You might be thinking, wait, isn't it natural to want things to stay the same, especially when things are good? And you're right, it is natural. But here's the thing. Spiritually awakened people understand that change is not just inevitable. It's essential for growth and evolution. Think about it for a moment. Everything in nature is constantly changing. Seasons come and go, rivers flow, even mountains erode over time. We are part of this natural world, yet so often we find ourselves fighting against change, clinging to what's familiar, even when it no longer serves us. Spiritually awakened people recognize that resisting change is like trying to hold back a river with your bare hands. It's exhausting, and ultimately, it's futile. Instead, they learn to flow with change, to see it not as a threat, but as an opportunity for growth and new experiences. So what does quitting resistance to change look like in real life? Well, let's say you lose your job. The old you might have panicked, seeing this as a disaster. But when you quit resisting change, you might instead see this as an opportunity to explore new career paths, to learn new skills, or to finally start that business you've been dreaming about. You're not denying the challenges that come with job loss, but you're open to the possibilities it might bring. Or imagine you're going through a breakup. Instead of desperately trying to hold on to the relationship or immediately jumping into a new one to maintain the status quo, you might use this time for self-reflection. What can you learn from this experience? How can you grow from it? When you quit resisting change, you're able to see endings not as failures, but as natural transitions that can lead to new beginnings. One of the most powerful aspects of quitting resistance to change is that it frees you from the suffering that comes from wishing things were different. How often have you stressed yourself out wishing a situation would go back to the way it was, or that something wouldn't change? When you quit resisting change, you save all that energy and can instead focus on adapting and growing. Now, you might be wondering, how do I actually do this? How do I quit resisting change when it feels so natural to want things to stay the same? Well, one powerful practice is mindfulness. When you're fully present in the moment, you're better able to respond to change with flexibility and grace. Instead of getting caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past, you can focus on what you can do right now. Another helpful approach is to reframe how you think about change. Instead of seeing it as something happening to you, try to see it as something happening for you. Every change, even the ones that seem negative at first, brings with it opportunities for learning and growth. Can you get curious about what those opportunities might be? It's also helpful to practice acceptance. This doesn't mean you have to like every change that comes your way, but can you accept that change is happening whether you like it or not? This acceptance is the first step in adapting to change in a positive way. As you practice quitting resistance to change, you might notice some interesting shifts in your life. For one, you might find that you feel less stressed and anxious. When you're not constantly fighting against the natural flow of life, you free up a lot of mental and emotional energy. You might find yourself feeling more peaceful, more at ease with the ups and downs of life. You might also notice that you become more resilient. When you're open to change, you're better able to bounce back from setbacks. Instead of being knocked down by unexpected events, you're able to roll with them, adapt, and keep moving forward. But perhaps the most exciting effect of quitting resistance to change is that you open yourself up to new possibilities. When you're not clinging to the way things are or the way you think they should be, you create space for new experiences, new relationships, new ways of being. You might find yourself trying things you never would have considered before, discovering new passions, or seeing the world in entirely new ways. Remember, quitting resistance to change doesn't mean you'll never feel uncomfortable with change again. Change can still be challenging, and it's okay to acknowledge those feelings. The key is not to let those feelings of discomfort stop you from moving forward and growing. So, the next time you feel yourself resisting change, take a deep breath. Can you open yourself, just a little bit, to the possibility that this change might bring something positive into your life? Can you get curious about what you might learn or how you might grow? Because when you quit resisting change, you're not just going with the flow. You're opening yourself up to the full, rich, ever-changing experience of life. Now, let's talk about something that almost all of us struggle with at some point: negative self-talk. You know that little voice in your head that criticizes everything you do? The one that says you're not good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. Well, here's the thing. Spiritually awakened people work on quitting this habit, and the reasons why are pretty amazing. First, let's be clear about what we mean by negative self-talk. It's those internal conversations we have with ourselves that are harsh, critical, and often unrealistic. It's the voice that replays our mistakes over and over, that compares us unfavorably to others, that tells us we can't achieve our dreams. And while it might seem like this voice is trying to protect us or motivate us, the truth is, it often does more harm than good. Spiritually awakened people understand that this negative self-talk is not their true voice. They recognize it as a habit, often learned from childhood experiences or societal pressures. And they understand that by quitting this habit, they can tap into their true potential and live more fulfilling lives. So what does quitting negative self-talk look like in real life? Well, imagine you're giving a presentation at work and you stumble over your words. The old you might have spent the rest of the day berating yourself, thinking, "I'm so stupid," or "I always mess things up." But when you quit negative self-talk, you might instead think, "Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. I'll learn from this and do better next time." You're not ignoring the mistake, but you're approaching it with kindness and a growth mindset. Or let's say you're trying to learn a new skill, like playing an instrument. Instead of getting frustrated and thinking, "I'll never be good at this," you might say to yourself, "Learning takes time. I'm making progress every day I practice." This kind of positive self-talk doesn't just feel better. It actually helps you persist and improve more quickly. One of the most powerful aspects of quitting negative self-talk is that it allows you to develop self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't about ignoring your flaws or never pushing yourself to improve. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a good friend. When you quit negative self-talk, you create space for this compassionate inner voice to emerge. Now, you might be thinking, But doesn't a little self-criticism keep me motivated and stop me from getting too big for my boots? It's a common concern, but research actually shows that self-compassion is more motivating than self-criticism in the long run. When we're kind to ourselves, we're more likely to pick ourselves up after failures and keep working towards our goals. So how do you start quitting the habit of negative self-talk? One powerful technique is to practice mindfulness. Start by simply noticing when you're engaging in negative self-talk. Don't judge it or try to push it away. Just observe it. This awareness is the first step in changing the habit. Another helpful practice is to challenge your negative thoughts. When you catch yourself thinking something negative, ask yourself, is this really true? Would I say this to a friend? What evidence do I have for and against this thought? Often, you'll find that your negative self-talk isn't based on reality, but on fear or old beliefs. You can also try replacing negative self-talk with more positive, realistic statements. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about speaking to yourself in a way that's kind, supportive, and truthful. For example, instead of, I'm a failure, you might say, I'm still learning and growing. As you practice quitting negative self-talk, you might notice some surprising benefits. For one, you'll likely find that your stress levels decrease. Negative self-talk is a major source of stress for many people. When you quit this habit, you might find yourself feeling more relaxed and at peace. You might also notice that your relationships improve. When we're kinder to ourselves, we tend to be kinder to others as well. Plus, when we're not constantly putting ourselves down, we have more energy to connect with others in meaningful ways. But perhaps the most profound effect of quitting negative self-talk is the way it can transform your sense of self. When you're not constantly criticizing yourself, you create space to recognize your inherent worth and potential. You might find yourself feeling more confident, more capable of taking on challenges, and more open to new experiences. Remember, quitting negative self-talk is a process. You've likely been practicing this habit for years, so it won't disappear overnight. Be patient with yourself. Each time you catch a negative thought and choose a kinder response, you're rewiring your brain and creating new, more positive habits. So, the next time you notice that critical inner voice piping up, take a deep breath. Can you offer yourself a word of kindness instead? Can you treat yourself with the same compassion you'd offer a dear friend? Because when you quit negative self-talk, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're changing your entire relationship with yourself. And that, my friend, is truly transformative. Let's talk about something that many of us struggle with, often without even realizing it. Seeking external validation. This is the last thing on our list that spiritually awakened people work on quitting, and it's a big one. You know that feeling when you post something on social media and keep checking for likes? Or when you make a decision based on what others will think rather than what feels right to you? That's the search for external validation in action. Now, don't get me wrong. It's natural to care about what others think to some extent. We're social creatures, after all. But spiritually awakened people understand that constantly seeking approval from others can be a never-ending chase that leaves you feeling empty and unfulfilled. When you're always looking outside yourself for validation, you're essentially giving away your power. You're saying, my worth depends on what others think of me. But here's the truth. Your worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion. It's inherent. You're valuable simply because you exist. So what does quitting the search for external validation look like in real life? Well, imagine you've just finished a project you're really proud of. Instead of immediately sharing it on social media and anxiously waiting for likes and comments, you might take a moment to sit with your own feelings of accomplishment. You appreciate your own hard work and creativity, regardless of what anyone else might think. Or let's say you're making a big life decision, like changing careers. Instead of polling all your friends and family for their opinions, you might spend some time in quiet reflection, tuning into your own inner wisdom. You consider others' advice, sure, but ultimately, you make the decision based on what feels right to you. One of the most powerful aspects of quitting the search for external validation is that it allows you to live more authentically. When you're not constantly trying to please others or meet their expectations, you're free to be who you truly are. You can express your unique ideas, follow your passions, and make choices that align with your values, even if they're unconventional. Now, you might be wondering, but how do I actually do this? How do I stop caring so much about what others think? Well, one powerful practice is to start building your self-trust. This means listening to your intuition, honoring your feelings, and following through on the commitments you make to yourself. As you do this, you'll start to realize that your own approval is the most important validation you can receive. Another helpful approach is to practice mindfulness. When you notice yourself seeking external validation, pause and take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I really looking for here? Often, you'll find that what you're truly seeking is a feeling of worthiness or belonging. Can you give that to yourself instead of looking for it from others? It's also helpful to reframe how you think about others' opinions. Remember that everyone's perspective is colored by their own experiences, fears, and desires. Their opinion of you says more about them than it does about you. Can you listen to others' feedback without letting it define your worth? As you practice quitting the search for external validation, you might notice some interesting changes in your life. For one, you might find that you feel more confident and self-assured. When you're not constantly worrying about what others think, you free up a lot of mental and emotional energy. You might find yourself taking more risks, expressing yourself more freely, and feeling more comfortable in your own skin. You might also notice that your relationships become more authentic. When you're not seeking validation from others, you're able to connect with them more genuinely. You're not trying to impress them or get something from them. You're simply sharing yourself and appreciating them for who they are. But perhaps the most profound effect of quitting the search for external validation is the sense of freedom it brings. When your sense of worth comes from within, you're no longer at the mercy of others' opinions. You're free to live your life on your own terms, to pursue what truly matters to you, and to become the fullest, most authentic version of yourself. Remember, quitting the search for external validation is a journey, not a destination. There will be times when you slip back into old habits, and that's okay. The key is to be gentle with yourself and keep practicing. Each time you choose self-approval over external validation, you're building a stronger, more confident version of yourself. So, the next time you find yourself seeking approval from others, take a deep breath. Can you turn inward and give yourself the validation you're seeking? Can you appreciate your own worth, regardless of what anyone else thinks? Because when you quit seeking external validation, you open yourself up to a whole new level of self-love and self-acceptance. And that, my friend, is truly liberating. As we wrap up our journey through these 7 things that spiritually awaken people quit, let's take a moment to reflect on the bigger picture. These aren't just habits to break or items on a to-do list. They represent a fundamental shift in how we relate to ourselves, to others, and to the world around us. By quitting living on autopilot, we wake up to the beauty and richness of each moment. When we let go of judging others, we open our hearts to deeper connection and understanding. Quitting the chase for happiness allows us to discover the joy that's already within us. Releasing the need to please others helps us live more authentically. Embracing change instead of resisting it allows us to flow with life rather than fight against it. Silencing our negative self-talk opens the door to self-compassion and growth. And finally, letting go of the need for external validation empowers us to live life on our own terms. Remember, spiritual awakening isn't about becoming a perfect person or achieving some idealized state. It's about becoming more fully yourself, more aware, more present, and more aligned with your true nature. It's a journey of unlearning as much as it is of learning, of letting go as much as it is of gaining. This journey isn't always easy. There will be challenges along the way. You might find yourself slipping back into old habits, and that's okay. What matters is that you keep moving forward, one step at a time, with patience and self-compassion. As you work on quitting these 7 things, you might notice some profound changes in your life. You might find yourself feeling more peaceful, more authentic, and more alive. You might discover a deeper sense of connection to yourself, to others, and to the world around you. You might even start to experience those moments of joy, clarity, and oneness that are the hallmarks of spiritual awakening. But perhaps the most beautiful thing about this journey is that it never really ends. There's always more to discover, more to let go of, more to embrace. Each day brings new opportunities to wake up, to grow, and to evolve. So, as you go forward from here, I invite you to be gentle with yourself. Celebrate your progress, no matter how small it might seem. Trust in your own inner wisdom. And remember, you're not alone on this path. We're all on this journey together, each in our own way, each at our own pace. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of spiritual awakening. May your journey be filled with discovery, growth, and joy. And may you always remember that the light you're seeking is already within you, waiting to shine.